Welcome to the fifth Balancing Brilliance event. We're going to be talking solving self-care for working moms. And we really want to be unlocking the keys to balance well-being and success. Just a couple of gentle reminders. If you want to turn your camera on, that would be great. Keep your mic off unless you're chatting. Get a pen and paper to take some notes. Have your favorite drink at hand to be hydrated, and pop any questions in the comments, or you can DM us after the event. So here's the lineup for the discussion. So I'll do some scene setting, then I'll do some introductions for all of us. Then we will spend most of our time in myth busting around self-care, Q&A if there's time, and then we'll talk about how to stay in touch. So this whole event came about because of a poll that I ran recently on LinkedIn, where I asked you what you struggle with the most. And not that surprising, self-care came out as the clear winner of the things that we struggle with the most as working moms. So it's not surprising, but it did give me pause, because if we know that self-care is the key to showing up as the person, the partner, the parent, and the professional that we want to be, and so many of us are struggling with it, what does that mean for our lives? So that's why I pulled this event together. And it got me thinking, why do we as working moms struggle so much with this? And it's mainly because of the challenges that we face. So it's the 3 S's for me of structural, societal, and self. So it's the lack of time, the guilt that we feel, the work pressure, the life pressure, the lack of support, financial pressure, our own expectations, other people's expectations. And all of these serve to create huge challenges that we all face and make self-care that much harder for us. Now, we know that self-care is important for everybody, not just working moms. And we know that in a corporate environment, lots of people struggle with the idea of self-care and the action and implementation of self-care. So why are working moms so special? Well, working moms are special, not just because I am a working mom, but we are special because we work within the current generation. So we're working to keep this generation going as we're building the next generation. We're the center of our families, and we're often leaders in businesses. So it's really important for us and for society and for businesses and for our kids that we get self-care right. So before we go any further, probably time to introduce myself. So I'm Sally. I'm a working mom, and I support working moms to thrive in the intersection, the clash of motherhood and careers. I spent 22 years at Coca-Cola, a wonderful career from the front lines to the exec suite, and ended up leading a global brand business there. And when I left corporate, I embarked on my mission to change the world for working moms, because we've operated very successfully, I might add, in a world that was not designed for us or by us. And my mission now is actually to change the world for working moms and for all caregivers, and to change the face of work. So that's a bit about me. And now on for our experts. First up is Jen. Jen, if you want to introduce yourself quickly.
Yes, hi, I'm Jennifer Jim, and I'm a mental health therapist and a coach around all things mental health. Particularly, though, I do work with so many working moms. I'm a working mom myself, and I really help build those foundational skills of mental health and well-being. And self-care is one of those. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And we are very happy to have you. And Dr. Susan Landers, you're up.
Hello, I worked for 34 years in the neonatal ICU, taking care of babies and their parents. I have a special affinity for moms, especially working moms. I raised 3 kids myself while I worked full-time practicing medicine. Since my retirement, I have become an advocate for working mothers with podcasts. I wrote a memoir. I have a Substack newsletter, and I have lots of free resources for working moms on my website. I'm thrilled to be invited.
I'm so thrilled to have both of you here, and I'm so thrilled that you agreed to come on this with me, because you both have the most amazing experience and expertise in this space. And I think all working moms should be talking to you anyway, and listening to you and learning with you. So on that note, we're going to be talking about some myth busting now. So I have identified 5 myths about self-care that I think are the key ones that tend to hold us back as working moms from self-care, from really self-caring for ourselves. So what will happen is that we'll go into each one quickly. We'll show what is the misperception about that myth, what is the impact, and then I will be asking our experts to dive in on what they think and give us their views on how we challenge these myths for working moms. So our first myth is that self-care is selfish. And I think that deep down inside, I think a lot of us, and a lot more of us than probably say so, think that self-care is selfish. And then we deprioritize it because it's selfish. So I shouldn't want to spend time on myself. So Jennifer and Susan, over to you. So Jennifer, what do you want the working moms who are listening to this, who are watching this, to think and know about self-care?
Well, the first thing is that you deserve it. It isn't really a debate of whether you should or shouldn't be able to take care of yourself. Like you deserve it. You are a human being who's taking care of other human beings. And so to be able to care for others, you need to be cared for. I like the reframe or the visualization of a pebble in a pond. You know, you drop that pebble and the ripples move out. When a mom takes care of themselves, the impact is huge, not just for her, but it ripples out into the entire world, beginning with your family. And so when you think about taking care of yourself, kind of to bust that myth of selfishness, is that visualization of those ripples in a pond, of how your self-care impacts so many others.
Love that. Love that. And Susan, same question for you. What do you want working moms to think and know about self-care?
I want working moms to think about that to-do list in their mind or on a piece of paper or on the computer, where everything that they have to do is on the list. And then they look down at the bottom and it says me. That's not the way we want to live our lives. We can't take care of others if we don't take care of ourselves. And as a caregiver for 34 years, I learned the hard way that I couldn't stay in the hospital 24 hours and come home and be everything to my toddlers. So self-care is absolutely mandatory for those of us who are caregivers. We don't have the energy, we don't have the battery power if we don't recharge ourselves, if we don't stay up with what our needs are as a human being. So self-care is really mandatory in my mind. We can't take care of others if we are flailing. We just can't do it.
I love the fact that it's mandatory, and I love the visualization of the ripples as well. And we start thinking about self-care as energy management, and how we manage our energy and our impact. And then just a quick one, and I mean, either of you could jump in on this, is sometimes we feel guilt about putting ourselves first. What would you say to that working mom who's starting to feel some guilt about doing her self-care plan, her energy management plan?
I would say that all working moms feel guilt. And usually it's about being away from our children when we're at work and not about self-care. And I want to reemphasize that taking care of yourself is so necessary that we need not feel guilty about that. When we do things that fill us up, that recharge us, that energize us, we feel better, and then we're better moms and we're better workers.
Yeah, and can I just add, guilt insinuates like we're doing something wrong, right? We're guilty. And I want you to question the source of that and ask yourself, like, where did this idea come from? Because sometimes when we can, if it's just like, well, me, great, you can throw that out then if you're the one who made the rule. But if it's something like, well, I saw it modeled for me by my mom, okay, well, then that gives you some action steps to be able to get rid of that guilt by exploring, like, why is this a rule? How, let me touch base with my mom. Let's explore the community around me, right? So ask yourself the question, where did this rule, right, around what I should or shouldn't be doing come from? And that can really give you a lot of good information.
Yeah, and it's also about that self-awareness and building a self-awareness about what you believe in and why you believe that and why you think that. Okay, so we're clear that self-care is not selfish. It's mandatory and benefits everybody. So myth number 2 is that self-care requires a significant amount of time. So we think about hours at the gym or going for a long run or whatever it is. And then it's too much to add into my schedule, so I just won't. So the question I have for the two of you is, if working moms could only do one thing when it comes to their self-care, what would you invite them to focus on? Maybe Susan, want to have
I
this
would
one first?
invite them to figure out what one thing nourishes them the most. Is it practicing gratitude in the evening, writing in your journal when the kids are in bed? Is it going for a walk and being out in nature? Is it calling a friend? I think those are things that are really pretty quick. They don't take a lot of time. If you're going to go on a 4-mile run, sure, that takes a lot of time and you need a babysitter, but they're really short, concise things that we can do to get in touch with ourselves and our feelings that are important for maintaining our well-being. And each of us has the potential to find that thing that helps us the most. For me, it's being outside. I'm just a in nature kind of person.
Love that. And I think that's talking about the things that nourish you the most. And again, that's self-awareness, and it doesn't have to take hours. Jennifer, what would you invite working moms to?
I invite them to participate in active rest. We a lot of times find ourselves, and this is because our brain is telling us this is a good idea, that I'm exhausted, I want to rest, I'm going to lay on the couch and scroll on my phone. And at the end of that time, we rarely feel better. And so if you can do anything, do something active rest, not again, 4-mile run, maybe depends on who you are, but an activity or something that fills you up so that at the end of 30 minutes, you feel restored, not depleted. And that can be anything, as Susan said, is paint by number. You could be a home barista and make yourself a really, fancy espresso drink. Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's walking, but it's an activity that restores you.
Love. So, I mean, it's an activity that restores. So that's the common theme coming through for me, is that it's an activity that restores. Love that.
Yes.
Myth number 3 is it's only when I'm feeling overwhelmed. So I don't do anything about it until, the red light on the dashboard comes along, and then it's too late. And then anything I do is not enough. So when it comes to this, what are your tips and tricks to help moms really think about that, ensuring that they focus on self-care, not when they're in crisis mode, before you hit the red line or before all the dash lights come on? Jennifer, if you want to go first.
Yeah, it's big. We think about self-care often when we're in that crisis mode, right? But from a mental health perspective, our nervous system is lit up at that point. And
Mhm.
chronic stress, right? It's like giving someone a band-aid and their arms falling off when it's like, here, take a bubble bath for self-care when you've been in this prolonged period of chronic stress. And
Yeah.
so, you know, when we're in an emergency, when we're in that state, I want you to think about how you would for physical health, like you would for your mental health, is you need more intense support. You don't need a band-aid, you need stitches, you need things to bring you together, right? You need recovery time. Self-care can be very preventative. You can also do it to restore, right? It is, you want to use it through the whole experience, but when there's an emergency, when you're feeling that just peak of overwhelm, I want you to think about, okay, I need more up that level.
Oh, I
Wonderful.
totally agree. If you find yourself at work sighing a lot, having to take deep breaths, that's your signal that you're overwhelmed and that you recognize that you're running on empty. And we've all felt that running on empty. It is so pervasive in some of our jobs. And then we leave the workplace and run home where we start out running on empty because we might have missed something or we have a new activity. So self-care in those moments is really almost like it is an emergency. You do need to take care of yourself when you're totally overdone and overwhelmed. But if we wait until the last minute, we're like the battery on red. What is it? The battery, our iPhones show us low power mode. And if we don't do those things to restore us before we get to low power mode, we will short out, literally. I've been there so many times after a busy day in the NICU and came home and feeling overwhelmed and poured up a glass of wine. And I thought for a long time that drinking alcohol was a great way to feel better, to settle my nerves. And it took me a while to figure out that it was affecting my sleep. It was giving me indigestion. It was helping me avoid whatever had created the overwhelm. And when I cut back on my drinking after the workday, I could come home, talk to my husband, take a short walk in the neighborhood. I learned to do the things to help me when I was overwhelmed that were actually restorative. What Jennifer said is so true. If we have to, at that point, restore our energy, or we will be running on fumes.
And I think both what you said is really important, particularly in a culture, which most businesses are, where we celebrate busyness and always being busy and always being a frazzled, burnt out executive. That's the image that we see all the time. It's actually rejecting that. And I love what you both said around that, recognizing your signals. So know what your signals are. Again, self-awareness, tuning into yourself and giving yourself the break. And not buying into the fact that you have to be overwhelmed and tired and frazzled. You can do something about it. So we've got two more to get through. So our next one is that self-care is indulgent and luxurious. So it's similar to the first one, but this is more about it costs money. And, I have for that right now. So, and we have spoken about this a little bit. We touched on it, a walk outdoors doesn't cost you any money. Doing breathing exercises isn't going to cost you anything. But how can working moms then find a way to address the challenge of finding time for self-care while also meeting their professional obligations?
Working in the hospital taught me that my colleagues at work, other physicians, nurses, parents, were there for sharing, for connecting. And it was so wonderful when I was able to do that. Not every day, sometimes I was too busy. It taught me that the human connections that we have at work, our peers, our colleagues, are so valuable. Coming home and scrolling on your phone is not restorative. Talking to a buddy at work who's going through exactly what you're going through is supportive and restorative. And it doesn't take any money. You just have to have a friend at work who's going through what you're going through. So I really want to emphasize not being on social media, talking to a friend, whether at work or at home, calling somebody that you trust to share. It is in the sharing where we feel supported.
I like that.
Mhm.
Jane?
I'll speak to time. There is so much discussion around time scarcity, right? That we just don't have enough time. And so I really encourage working moms to use our employment to our advantage, because most positions have a lunch break, right? Or a midday break, and use that time. Take that time, right? It is actually intended for us to take a break. And there's actually a lot of research out there now too about how taking that midday break just can be so impactful in terms of your, lowering stress levels. And man, how many times, I'm guilty of this too, as moms, it's like, oh, well, I'll take my me time after I get the kids in bed. And now it's, 8:30 and I'm too tired to do
Right,
it then.
right.
And so if we use that midday break and really take a look at what we can do in that time frame, there's so many things we could do. Talk to a friend, right? Even just
Exactly.
taking a break, doing some breath work, um, using that space. And a lot of workplaces right now are doing a big push on wellness. I do some trainings for workplaces. And so communicating your intention, right? Getting some of your colleagues on board with you, like, hey, let's all
Yes.
take our lunch, and also honor each other's lunches and not schedule meetings over the top of them.
I love
And
that.
Jennifer, I read there was a study where if people took their lunches outside in nature, in a green space, it was even more beneficial than if they just took their lunch in the cafeteria. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever we can escape from our workplace for that 30 or 40-minute break, it's great to get outside. It's very restorative.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And using the time that we have well. So we're using it to restore ourselves and connect with other people and build that energy as well. So, okay. So we know that it's not indulgent or luxurious, and we can fit it in if we're mindful. So our last method we're going to talk about is it's a one size fits all. So, someone publishes the newest thing in self-care, and it's the 5 a.m. club, which used to work for me, but doesn't work for me anymore because I got kids. So like the 5 a.m. club, I reject. But there's always, it's this, well, I've tried it and it doesn't work for me. So, I just won't do it, or I can't do it. So in thinking about that, are there self-care practices that promote a mental and emotional resilience for working moms?
I think practicing gratitude is on that list very high up. So is being in nature, so is moving your body. Most of us have the hardest time with exercise and moving our body, but walking in nature is as beneficial as for your mental health as going for a run, and it takes less time. What I learned about self-care over the years is that my needs changed, and the method of self-care that I used varied a little bit depending on my age and the age of my kids and their schedules. I could read a book while they were at soccer practice, or I could practice gratitude and write in a journal when they were little and in bed early. Or when they were elementary age, I could get my husband to watch them, and I did go for a run for a couple of miles. And so it really varied depending on when my partner could help me and what I felt like I needed. we all have to find what fits for us, what works for us, what makes us feel nourished and restored.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer?
Yeah, my top two for emotional resilience are creative expression and engaging with nature. I agree with you, Susan. Those are kind of my top. And then pairing that with some self-compassion, right? Creative expression, I'm not talking about being an artist, but anything that you do that kind of creatively expresses who you are, dancing in your living room, cooking for fun, anything. It's about the process, not the outcome, which is really helpful in terms of taking care of ourselves. That's where the compassion comes in. And I find with nature, it helps us zoom out and gain some context and perspective, right? So we see resiliency present in nature all around us. And that can sometimes help give us context around our own, like, oh, wow, look at this. Nature can have destruction and come back over and over. So it models resiliency. So there's that creative expression, engaging with nature, coupled with that self-compassion.
Love that. And self-compassion is also, I mean, it is linked to self-care.
Yes.
So it's equally something that I think as working moms, we do struggle with quite a lot. And I love the creative expression and nature, getting out, moving, and the changing your perspective, because we get so stuck in the details, the busyness, the crazy logistics of, and the mom maths of when do we have to leave home to get there by 10, that we get so caught up in that. So that giving us the zoomed out perspective of life and what's happening around us is, I think, is really important.
We haven't mentioned music yet, and it's not as creative unless you're playing the musical instrument, but it still works your right brain, like doing something creative, like baking, like gardening, like walking in nature. And so listening to music is just as powerful for restoring well-being as some of those other creative activities. If you play an instrument, even better. That's the best. That's where you go a different place and leave your stress behind.
I love music. I don't play an instrument and I don't sing well, but I do sing loudly and enthusiastically. Mainly to country music, yes. And I love doing it. So I do it in the car whenever I can, windows down. I'm the crazy person singing in the car. So I do find music it helps me, it restores my energy. So thank you for mentioning that. So, I mean, we have been through a lot. So I thought I'd slap on the screen some of the things that I was thinking about in the lead up to this. And you can read them on the screen, but some of the things that have really struck me from what you two have said, Jen, that pebble in the pond, the positive ripples on other people, of you taking care of yourself, because you're able to show up as the best version of yourself everywhere for everyone if you take care of yourself. So I love that visual, and that Susan, the battery power and the recharging. So it's that reframe that it is about energy and active rest. Love the idea of active rest. Just love that. Recognizing your signals. So again, self-awareness. When am I feeling stressed? When am I on the path, at the beginning of the path, instead of in the middle of the forest of chaos? When I'm at the beginning of the path leading there, I'm aware and can do something about it, so that I don't need stitches that a Band-Aid will do. And the sharing, connecting, human connections, loved all of that. Using your 30-minute lunch break for active restoration, love that so much. Creative expression, nature, music we've added in, moving our bodies. So it doesn't have to be a gym, an hour in the gym. It could be anything that restores our energy. So I just love that reframe of self-care as it's not bubble baths or spa days or hours in the gym. It's being aware of what restores our energy. So I love that. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. We're 1 minute over, but I just want to get to the end because we love to stay in touch. And anyone who's listening to this or watching this, I really recommend that you get in touch with our fabulous experts. They have a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, a lot of tools, tips, tricks, and resources that we could all use in everyday life. So please do reach out to them. I love staying in touch with you as well. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I've got the profile page, the company page, the New Balancing Brilliance group. Book a call, let's chat. Visit the website. Ask me about my new Thrive Now program as well, which is a brand new structure. If you're not ready for one-on-one coaching, I've got a short course as well. It's the Balancing Brilliance Launchpad. And as a thank you for everyone who registered and who's watching this, I'll be sending you my self-care workbook so that you can start creating your own brilliant balance and supporting your own self-care. So I'd love you to stay in touch. There's lots of ways that you can get in touch with me and stay in touch with me. And then for Jennifer, again, reach out to her, follow her on LinkedIn, visit the website. She's around. If you need help, contact her, please. And Susan as well, the website. You can get your wellness journal for free. It's a free resource. So go click on the website for your free wellness journal and subscribe to her Substack newsletter, Moms Matter. I do love the name. Get reading of some valuable insights there as well. And lastly, thank you to everyone for listening to this. If you do have any questions, please feel free to DM me on LinkedIn, get in touch with me or Jennifer or Susan. We are always here and we do love to connect. And here's to changing self-care for working moms.